you have a new album coming out, live from the quarry, and I was able to listen to it this morning, and it is hauntingly beautiful.
Hell, that's so crazy, Lit. You're the second person to use that adjective. And
Really?
the first person that said it is actually my mother-in-law. And that was what she said the first time she heard the music. And she doesn't use words lightly. Like, she's a bit of a wordsmith. So yeah, that descriptor means a lot. It carries a lot of weight to me. Thank you for saying that.
Well, absolutely. And I mean it. It really is. It's so beautiful. And the fact that you wrote and produced this album is just so incredible to me. So, what was the process like of creating this album?
Absolutely. It was a very unconventional one. I will say that. I've been writing and recording for the past decade, and never have I ever written a project on my own. Never have I ever produced a project on my own. And never have I ever written a project without the intention of releasing it into the world. So those were like three big firsts that have really shaped the release process and the feelings that have gone along with that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, you have so many awesome songs on this album, and one of my favorites is the song Known, Seen, and Loved, because you're
Mm.
talking about in a topic here that is so personal for so many people. So, what is the backstory behind this song?
This was the song I was most nervous to share, Leah. So I'm so glad that it's your favorite. Um, I I had experienced my deepest hurt, and probably my lowest low at the beginning of 2020, end of 2019. So it like I went into quarantine before quarantine was a thing. Like I was so broken. And I've heard people describe heartbreak before in a way where it's like, I don't want to eat, I don't want to get up out of bed, I just feel so heavy, I'm just so sad. And like, I'm such a go-getter person, and I'm like, when your background's in like athletics, you're like, you just got to go. And I don't think I'd ever fully reached that point before of like, I can't will myself out of this, I can't talk myself out of this. And I'd always thought to myself, if I had ever reached such a low, um, that I would force myself to go on walks. That's the only thing I could think to do if I ever reached that point. I was kind of like hypothetically, but in the moment, that really, I was like, oh, I remember when I used to tell myself that if I ever reached this point, I would go on walks. So here I am, and I don't want to get out of bed, but I will go on a walk. And so I would go on these walks. I would take my Great Dane, which you can kind of see her in this corner. You can at least see her super long legs. She's so big. She blends into the carpet. So it's like, unless I point her out, you actually can't see her.
Oh,
But I'd take her on walks. And on one particular walk, I had just been kind of praying and processing. And sometimes, I'll just talk out loud to myself, especially when no one else is around. And I basically said or spoke what is in the pre-chorus to this song. Like, God, I have worked so hard for answers. I have desperately asked you for, justice. I have wanted power. I've desperately asked you for healing. But I think in my striving for all of these things, I'm realizing that I'm hitting a wall with all of it. Like, it's not giving me the peace that I so desperately need. And I think the only thing that can do that is if I sit for long enough to actually experience what it feels like to be known, seen, and loved by you.
mhm.
So that turned into the pre-chorus. And part of the reason I was nervous to share it is because healing, justice, power, all of these things are so important, and they play a very important role in the health of a culture, in the health of a human being. Um, but whenever we strive for those things more than working in any way we can to sit and to be and to know that we're known, seen, and loved despite what we do or what has been done to us, um we'll just end up like empty handed. At least for me, that's what it felt like. I was just like, I've worked so hard for all these things and I still am exhausted and tired and sad, and I've only caught glimpses of what it is to feel truly known and seen and loved by you. And in those brief moments, those are the only times where I feel like my head is above water and like I can breathe or okay, you know.
God is pruning friendships, he's pruning relationships, and he's making himself known. And so I think this song is just so incredibly timely, more so than you even know.
Mm, I I wouldn't trade it. Like I wouldn't want to walk through it again and I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but the lessons that I've learned and how it's changed how I view myself and how I view the world around me, I don't know that I would have learned these lessons any other way.
Let's talk about your song with your husband. It's titled Worth. What's the backstory behind the song, and what was it like creating a song with your spouse?
Oh my gosh, so sweet. I love him. He's so nice. Um well, Joel and I have a history of creative collaboration. It's how we got to know one another. You know, we met at a wedding, and then I saw him sing at church like the day after the wedding. And it was one of those things where you're like, "Our God is an awesome God, he reigns." You know, like looking like, oh gosh, like I can't stop looking at this guy who's like singing on stage. Um, but he had asked me at church if I wanted to write a song with him, if we just want to do like set up a co-writing session, because that's what I had come to Nashville for, was to write music. And so I think we ended up spending like 2 weeks on a song, which is a lot more.
Smooth, Joel. Very
I know. It's a lot more than you typically spend, you know, in a writing session with someone you just met. But we really got to know each other in that way. So I think we've always respected one another as creatives first and foremost. And I think with that being the foundation of our relationship, you know, our love for music, our love for God, our love for creatively collaborating, it makes for Worth and this Friday's release of the song Worth to be almost an homage to our history and a celebration of all of the lessons that we've learned in the years of working together. So I'm really, really excited to be able to put out a song that features his beautiful voice. A bit of history on the song: when I wrote it, this was one of the few songs that I wrote towards, you know, the tail end of kind of that writing season in 2020. And I I wrote it because I had just heard a story about my grandmother, my father's mother, that just broke my heart. You know, she's she's an amazing woman, and she immigrated from Mexico when she was in the sixth grade because she had to stop going to school in sixth grade so she could work in the fields and factories of California so that she could provide for her family
wow.
and her siblings. And then becoming an adult, you know, she got married, and then her life was still hard. You know, she had 5 kids, and she experienced abuse. And I think the thing that I now really have come to appreciate is the sacrifice of the people who've gone before me, my grandparents, my parents, who have all overcome so much. And one of the last things my nana said to me because I just wanted to ask her advice. Like, what do I do when things are hard? Like, what do I do when I just want to quit, you know? And her response was, and she says this like from a hospital bed, like she's like, you gotta be tough like your nana. I was like, okay, got it. And there is I think an inheritance. Like I feel like I've inherited an endurance and a toughness
Mhm.
that has been passed down through the generations. And I think there takes a certain fortitude to become aware of and to appreciate your own worth and your own value when your circumstances, when the people around you, when the situation you find yourself in is tearing you down, is trying to tell you that you're not worthy, that you're not worth it, that you don't deserve love, that you have to earn your right to exist on this planet. You know, when that's the narrative around you, um, it takes so much mental fortitude and strength of spirit to go, God, you have created me and my identity is in you. And that identity cannot be touched by job changes, by failure, by seasons of low productivity where I feel like I've lost the right to call myself creative. My identity is in you. And so that value system, it can stay consistent, and it can be foundationally just strong when the rest of the world is, you know, spiraling out of control.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Now
Yeah.
you are a multi hyphenate. You do so many things. You're a singer, songwriter, producer, actress. How do you
Mm.
stay present spiritually, relationally, when you're juggling all of these roles?
That's a great question. I haven't always done that well. So whatever I share is coming from a place of like having learned from experience, you know, how to really mess things up. I think the creative process is fueled by failure and critique. And that's something that I've learned to really cherish is failure, critique, obscurity, rejection, all these things that as creatives we're taught to like run away from and like, oh my gosh, I can't handle it. Like those things have actually become friends to me, and I welcome those things in my life. And I think one of the biggest things I learned through massive failure and massive critique is that I am so vision oriented, and I and it's a beautiful thing. It's the way that God created me to see the world not just as it is but how it could be. And so I'm prone to, you know, see a version of reality that I want to, you know, I want everyone else to see the same vision, and I want to move towards it, and I want to accomplish a goal or a task or a thing. And what I've realized over time is that um there are times where I can value product over people, and that never ends well. um and I think another thing I've learned is that endurance is more valuable than success.
Mhm.
So I try to have a long term vision and view of things. And I try to, on a daily basis, check my ego at the door because it's a really big one. And and put people first. So you know, valuing the people that I work with, valuing community over, you know, job opportunity, because work and jobs will come and go, and seasons of productivity will be high and then will be low. But the relationships that we form along the way, those are the things that shape who we are as people, who shape our character. And that's where we have lasting impact on the world, is when we get to do life with someone and encourage them or build them up. And so I try to do all of my work from that lens of valuing people over product.
What is your hope for your latest album? Because you really are, you're talking about so many issues that I think are really going to resonate, especially with women.
I do know that we culturally, particularly like this generation, like we're pretty overwhelmed. We're pretty inundated, and it's hard to it's hard to mentally process all that we're exposed to in a single day, let alone 20 years. It's like, um I heard a stat just about suicide being, I think, the second leading cause of death for young people right now. And that really, it hits me. Like it why would we be alive in this time and not 100 years ago or 100 years from now? Like, why? And I hope everybody asks that question regardless of their job description. Like, why do I exist right now for such a time as this? Why has God put a microphone in front of me? Why has he allowed for producing to all of a sudden just click, where I've tried it before and it didn't make sense to me and now all of a sudden it does? Like, why are these songs being downloaded into my head right now? um and I don't know, for me, when I start with the why, I find that it often leads to something that's bigger than myself. um I realize that music is a really powerful tool, but it's not the only tool in the box. Um, but now more than ever, I feel like I'm alive in this time to be on the edges of the inside and to serve people who are underserved and to reach people who are underreached. And so it's not about any form of success or like, I don't need anything. I'm so content. I have way more than I ever thought that I would have, just as a person. And so I really am thankful to be sharing music from an overflow. And I think that as people hear these songs, I hope that they can serve as as an underscore to their pain, a soundtrack to their questions. Um, that the music that I created in a time where I was very alone and I felt very, um, just heavy and in a really scared place, that it would be a comfort to someone else to know that they're not alone in that. um, and that there is joy, there is healing on the other side, and that you just have to have endurance and you have to keep facing each day. um, and that it's okay to face the questions. You don't have to run from them. It's okay to feel the fear, let it pass through you, because on the other side of that may very well be, a glimmer of hope, and that light just gets bigger and bigger with every day that we choose to contend with and face the things that overwhelm us.